I'm currently in thunderstorming Taipei for Computex, which this year has an interesting vibe. On the one hand, you've got a bunch of tech companies real excited to show off their new goodies, but then there's this underlying dread that comes from the sense that the top of the space is trying to consume all of it for their mad dash to create a Lovecraftian nightmare. So in today's video, I'm gonna do my best and worst of Computex 2026. Thank you very much, Asus and Be Quiet, for helping us get here. Screens! More screens! 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 Some more screens! Well, the Austrians did the math and it turns out screens are bad. You see, Noctua did some Doppler laser vibrometer measurements, and it turns out when you put a big display on the front of an AIO, it takes the vibrations from the pump and essentially acts as a speaker. Noctua's solution to this was to have the AIO pump cover be a tuned mass dampener, which basically means they've got a bunch of different densities of foam that's tuned to the vibration frequency of the pump, and then when they vibrate in like the opposite direction, they cancel those frequencies out, which led to some massive improvements in the acoustic annoyance measurement, which is a legitimate thing, that's real. Now, if your response to this information is, "But David, I'm a sex haver, I don't care about the annoyance factor of my AIO pump, I just want EP." Yeah, well, then I guess we gotta go back to screens! Be Quiet announced their new Light Loop IO AIO series with some really smart software implementation. You can have some animations running as a separate layer behind your overlay, which is really cool. And they use the same CPU mounting as their air coolers, making upgrading real easy. On the note of Be Quiet's new IO Center software, my favorite feature is that you can now connect one of their IO power supplies and get really detailed readings about power draw on like various 12-volt rails and stuff. Really cool. I mean, generally, their new IO ecosystem seems sick with their single cable fan connector jobbies and stackable controllers. Corsair announced their new Titan 2 series of AIOs, the Ultra version of which comes with a dual layer radiator and a semi-liquid metal thermal interface implementation, which seems really interesting. The screen is also magnetically removable and backwards compatible with previous gen Titan coolers, so you could upgrade that if you wanted to. And then finally, Deepcool announced their new Silent Knox Pro 360 with a massive AMOLED curved display, which is also magnetically removable, so you can change the orientation of it in your case real easily. And then there's Deepcool's LT360 Vision, which has its display on a hinge so that you can angle it towards you. Maybe the Austrians will feel better about that one, not sure. Now, in terms of air cooler, I was also very excited to see Deepcool's new AK700 VC, a single tower air cooler which apparently has better performance than the dual tower AK620, an old Deepcool cooler that I love. It also comes with their new fans that has a clear fan hub which lets you see the motor spinning inside. Really cool. Apparently it spins with like super low vibration. Now, my favorite case announced at Computex was Corsair's new Warthog. I mean, just look at it! Now, I'm sure there's a nostalgia element as to why I like it so much. This has a real early 2010s PC gaming case vibe to it. But that's something that's so rare these days. Everything's just a fish tank, so this is a really nice change. Now, straight off the bat, there is some mild disappointment here. Despite this being inspired by an A10 Warthog, the power button is a button and not a switch. Now, I did raise this concern with Corsair, and apparently earlier prototypes did have like flight switches for the power button, but they were super expensive to implement and surprisingly fragile, so they thought that a button was the better choice. And at least the reset button has a button cover, which still feels sick and military aircrafty. Oh, and there's also a button for the rear I/O light, so that you don't have to go fingering the back in the dark. Now, the internals of the Warthog are based on the Frame 4000D, so you've got similar features features like its InfiniRail fan mounting system and its GPU anti-sag stabilization arm. But that also means it's compatible with Corsair's 3D printable hard drive cages, so you can add a bunch of hard drive storage to this thing if you need that. The Warthog will be available in two colors, black or olive drab. The olive drab being an amazing basis for a Doom-based setup like they have here. I mean, the Warthog has a real Doom guy armor vibe to it. You can also choose between the standard model that comes with no fans or the RS models, which comes with two of their 200mm fans, which again feel reminiscent of the half glory days. But because of how the steel panels, grab handles, and tempered glass side panel are implemented, this feels like a much sturdier version of a half. The Warthog really feels as rugged and sturdy as it looks, which often isn't the case with cases of this aesthetic. But yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on this thing and build like a dark non-RGB system in it. It's gonna be awesome. Now at this Computex, we also got to see some demos of Nvidia's new RTX Spark, most of which involved a bunch of AI programming demos, which honestly, I understand very little of. However, according to them, it was all running locally on the machine, which to me makes it better than something like Copilot, but we'll have to see how this thing goes. You know, it is Microsoft, they love getting their fingers deep in your telemetry. They also gave us some brief hands-on gaming demos with the RTX Spark, but we didn't know what settings they were using, and they did seem to go balls to the wall with frame gen on all of it, so it was very difficult to get a genuine feeling for what the gaming was like. The main adjective I'd use is smeary, although they did not like that word. It didn't go down well. But what we could get a sense of was the small form factor of the devices and the fact that while they were gaming, there wasn't that much noise for a laptop gaming. So efficiency is clearly going to be very good for these devices. So if you're an oligarch that can drop, what, I don't know, like 6K on one of these devices, then I'm sure you'll probably be stoked on the thermal performance. On the note of DLSS, they did also show off their new DLSS 4.5 ray reconstruction, which does actually seem like a pretty big improvement. One of the main things that it fixes is the DLSS's tendency to have lighting kind of slowly fade in and out. It happens way more snappily now, which is great. I think that makes a huge difference. I've always hated that fading. And this new ray reconstruction is going to be available on GPUs all the way back to the RTX 20 series, which I was very excited to hear. But by far the most exciting thing that they showed off at Nvidia, in my opinion, was that they're getting anti-cheat working on ARM devices. They even showed some Fortnite playing on the RTX Spark, but this is going to be available on all Windows ARM devices, so you're not going to have to buy an RTX yacht book for this kind of thing, which is huge. In terms of nostalgia, this is probably my favorite product announced by ROG today. Because look, they've got the same color scheme on the RAM slots and all of the components all over the motherboard of the original ROG motherboards. That's amazing! Look at it! Now we just need to ignore the fact that these are going to sell for like $800 US. What in the world? At least they also had one of the original ones of these motherboards, which was a pretty good distraction for me. So this was one of the first Asus ROG motherboards, and what's really exciting about this board is that it has actual barbs for liquid cooling on the North Bridge, because this generation of LGA 775 CPUs back in the day used the North Bridge to communicate with the RAM, and it was a super heat-intensive process. So then Asus added the liquid cooling block so that you could actually draw a bunch of that heat out. And it also, via heat pipe, connects with the VRM cooling so that it also helps draw heat away from that. But I remember this motherboard coming out back in the day, and it was a complete beast. I was so excited about it. Little Dawid was all aroused by it. Another pretty underrated part about this motherboard is that it was a pretty early pioneer of proper port placement on motherboards. I mean, it might seem obvious now, but having the CPU power in the top left corner, the motherboard 24 pin on the right corner here, and the SATA connectors down here was actually not a common thing to do in this period of motherboards. And then finally, another thing, this was also the first motherboard with dual 16 XPCIe slots, so mad SLI bandwidth. Which brings me to the end of my best and worst of Computex 2026. The show is honestly so massive that it's difficult to cover even a small percentage of it. Yo, random case manufacturers are clearly alive and thriving. Look at the gold horse thing. But the combination of exciting tech and foot-deep existential dread made for a really interesting combination this time. So if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And until the next video, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.